Wait. Good evening. We are starting our part 2 of assistive reproductive technology in Halacha. Last week we started from the beginning discussing Ambati, which was the case in the Gemara, and the discussion in the Rishon and Machronim if someone became pregnant through an Ambati, through bath water, whether the child is linked to the father, whether it's his son, B, whether he's Mekayim Pruvu. And then we started discussing, so we had a discussion here between the opinion of Rabbi Yonasan and Eibeshitz, the opinion of Yaakov Emden, why it might not be. But we said in conclusion that most people agreed, most people passed, and even in the case of Ambati, it would be. But even if that's not the case, IUI, what we call artificial insemination, is much better than that. Why? Because if you were to say that the issue is that the issue with Ambati is you don't know who the father is, right? Who's your daddy, right? If that's the issue, then in the case of IUI, you obviously know who the father is. This is an act of of building a family. If you say the issue is like Rav Yaakov Emden, there's no kavana, it's just haphazard. Obviously, when you're going fertility treatment, any fertility treatment, there is definitely kavana to have children. So that falls by the wayside. And then we ended off last week discussing whether it's mutter to do IUI, not whether the consequences your son, Pruvu, but is it mutter? And we saw two opinions, if you remember. We saw the opinion of the Divrei Malkiel. The Divrei Malkiel was the originator of the opinion in Europe that IUI, or artificial insemination, fertility treatments of that type, are usher. And he gave 3 reasons. Reason one. Well, actually, two of the 3 reasons are really to do with Hotzas Zera Levatala. One is it's Hotzas Zera Levatala when you're preparing for the treatment. 2 is not only is it Hotzas Zera Levatala then, but it's possible that the doctors might lose, oops, there goes the test tube, and you might have to do it again, or you might get wasted. And the biggest concern of his was not a mistake, but more an intentional mistake. That somehow the doctors would be using, instead of saying that this isn't good enough, let me use my own specimen for the fertility treatment instead of. And we gave a lot of examples of where that's happened in the States, in England. It's happened. I won't be surprised if it's happened here also. Don't know, but something that's happened quite a bit across the world.
How do we know?
There are major lawsuits. In Fairfax, Virginia, there was a very big one in 1992.
The guy just went to jail.
Yeah, there's a couple of major stories that have happened. So this is where Hashgacha gets in. We'll get to Hashgacha later. So that's what he said, and he answered.
Is that like get into like youth or?
Get into a lot. So we're gonna we will. Well, the problem is, first of all, it's not your child. That means he's using someone else's stuff. So what is that issue? That is the whole big machlok, which we'll get to hopefully, between Rav Moshe and the Satmarav and many other poskim about are you allowed to use semen from a donor?
So, but sorry, who is the Rav who says it's Asur IUI?
Divrei Malkiel. So in Europe, this is when Divrei Malkiel, I don't remember his name. He was one of the basically 3 or 4 major psakim that came out in Europe. Again, just historically, IUI started at the end of the 19th century.
Still done today.
Okay, well, yeah, still done today. That's usually the first stop, depending on what the issue is. It's for different medical issues, but it's usually the first stop. So Divrei Malkiel was of the school that even though technically maybe it is your kid and everything's fine, but the Chatzila you're not allowed to do it because it can cause major issues, etc. On the other side, we saw the Marasham from Brezhin, who said, again, contemporary of the Divrei Malkiel, who said, no, I don't think these are issues. Why are these not issues? So he said, first of all, in terms of Hotzar Zera Levatala, this is not Hotzar Zera Levatala. As long as you're assuming there is a mitzvah pruvu, as long as you are assuming there is a positive effect of what you are doing, this is not levatala anymore. And he brings a raya from Tshuvas Harama that when you do something, stira al manas livnos is considered like b'niyah. Even if you're doing something initially that looks like it's levatala, but as long as the intent in the end, the final act, is not levatala, and clearly this is not, you're having children, so therefore it's not levatala. So that's a very important note here. So there's no issue with Hotzas Zera Levatala. he doesn't really deal to the extent of Divrei Malkiel on the issue of can we trust the doctors, which is a major issue throughout halacha. How much can you trust doctors? And again, as I mentioned, there have been issues. There have been documented major issues. So he doesn't go into that per se, but he clinches his heter, or he puts conditions on his heter on three things. One, that there should be at least two doctors. Don't assume one. One's not enough. You still have at least two, and we'll get to that when we deal with hashgacha. Two, you should not do IUI, this fertility treatment, unless the couple has not had children for 10 years. In other words, why 10 years? Because that halachically, even though if you learn Even as a Siman Aleph, we paskin nowadays we don't divorce over things like this. That's an Even as a Siman Aleph. We don't force it. We don't tell a couple you should get divorced after 10 years if you don't have children. That's not what we do nowadays. But even so, since it's such a concept, no. In general, yeah, this is what the Ramah brings. The Ramah brings us down. This is, yeah, we don't force somebody. We don't sort of encourage them to get divorced if they don't have kids. We don't do that nowadays. We won't discuss that. Why not now?
Used to do that?
It seems so. Look, Avram Parshas Lech Lecha, right?
He didn't divorce her.
He didn't divorce her, but he said, okay, maybe it's time for somebody else.
Oh, sorry.
Right?
It was her initiative, which I regretted.
Okay,
but
and Chanami.
I regretted also.
So yes, that's brought down in the Gemara. But the Rama says we're not nohig, we're not so machmir and pruvu nowadays that we tell people to get divorced for such things. Okay, but even though that's the case, 10 years is a long time. You see there is such an idea that it's for shalom bayis reasons and things like that. So after 10 years you don't have kids, he gives the heter. And the third thing he says is that I'm not going to give my heter unless other people are masking with me, which other people were. Other rabbanim were masking with him. But in other words, the main thing I would say is hashgacha, some sort of oversight, which he says is enough to have two rofim, two doctors, not just one. We don't trust one. You have to have two. And the second thing is, we're not giving a blanket heter. We're saying only after you are childless for 10 years you can do this, because it's questionable. That's what he said. Now, the other contemporaries of this, I mentioned there were a couple other psakim in Europe. Another posek in Europe was the Zkan Aaron, which we're going to deal with in a second. Zkan Aaron, Rav Volkin, whose grandson actually is a mashgiach in Ateret Yisrael, Rav Chaim Volkin, his grandson. So he also wrote same time, between again the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. He also wrote a tshuva on this. This was the hot topic in those days, as you can probably imagine. And he also is matter, and he's matter without 10 years already. So he's already does away with the 10 years. He says, why 10 years? Why 10 years? In other words, I'm matter. If it's okay, it's okay.
Because also you have an issue like if a woman gets married later, close to 40, and she's not married 10
100%. In that light, or in that vein, Rav Vosner has a tshuva. Now, Rav Vosner is writing in our age. So Rav Vosner has a tshuva that in those days, the reason why the Marsham wrote 10 years was because in those days, you didn't really know what was going on. Medicine wasn't so advanced. You didn't know what was going on. So, but nowadays, even if immediately you got married and you know for sure there's an issue, which there are plenty of tests, whether it's male infertility or female infertility, either way, once it's barur that that's the case, then you can start immediately. You don't have to wait. Whereas in those days, in Echanami, no one knew what the issue was. Maybe there was something else going on.
Are there any poskim today that do not permit IUI?
So, we mentioned last time that based on the Divrei Malkiel, now you're asking nowadays, mamish nowadays, this obviously would have changed. If the based on the Divrei Malkiel, the Chazon Ish is quoted as having acid IUI. The Brisker Rav supposedly acid IUI. This is brought down. Rav Sternbuch quotes this quite a bit in Chuvas and Hagos. It seems from Shemach that he is matter IUI. Rav Yashiv, from what I could tell based on a lot of things, he was matter IUI, he's matter IVF. Under certain circumstances, which we'll discuss also. So generally, you're right. I don't think anyone, to the best of my knowledge, I'm doing IUI nowadays. To the best of my knowledge.
They don't do IUI?
Because of Chazon Ish. I have a hard time believing that, but I don't know. I haven't researched that part. IUI is what we call artificial insemination. Okay, in other words, nothing comes out of the woman. We're just assisting the sperm to go in.
It's just
to the right
IUI
place.
is a woman.
To win what? Yeah, it's injecting essentially.
The problem is the infertility problem is with
the man usually.
The man.
Right. or for whatever reason the sperm can't get to the
I would think that from a halacha perspective, IUI is more secure, safe than IVF.
We're going to get to that in a second. That's exactly the direction we're going in.
Okay.
So that is as far as IUI. Fine, everything's good. Are there any other issues before we move on? Any other issues with IUI? So Tzitz Eliezer brings an interesting thing again regarding Pruvu and Hotzah Zel Vatala. Tzitz Eliezer
By the way, I think there are also some posting that will condition it on. I'm sorry, you're probably about to say what I'm going to say. Go on.
I don't know if I'm about to say what you're going to say,
There are some people that will say that if you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of Pruvu, one son and one daughter, you can do whatever.
Right. Okay. Maybe we'll get to that.
Yeah. I think Rabbi Weiss wants that.
Okay. Yeah. So where was I? I just got distracted. Tzitz Eliezer. So the Tzitz Eliezer, and it's not this tshuva, and a different tshuva. Tzitz Eliezer says, here's another issue. He said, who's doing Pruvu in the case of IUI? The husband, right? Well, he says, 1 second. Who's injecting the sperm?
That's irrelevant.
The doctor. It says it to Eliezer.
But it's not his.
Who's doing the mitzvah proof?
It's not his sperm.
Okay. So, well, we hope. Right. So that is the intent, at least. So who is doing the action in Maisa mitzvah? We're talking about Maisa mitzvah. Who's doing the Maisa mitzvah proof? So he says he doesn't feel that even if you say it's mutter to do it, he doesn't feel necessarily that he feels there's a good side to say that you're not mekayim mitzvah proof. You're not doing anything. Who's doing it? The doctor. There's a third party who's doing the actual insemination. You're not doing it.
The final result.
So this is what we discussed. Is the minchas like the minchas chinuch? Is the mitzvah proof? Is it the final result that is? Yeah. Or is there a ma'isa mitzvah that you have to have also?
Is it a mitzvah shebegufa, or if you're going to have a shaliach?
Well, you would think if there's any mitzvah shebegufa, right? So you're laughing. So Tzvi Pesach Frank has a tshuva where he deals with this also. I mean, all the poskim have chuvas on this, as you can probably imagine. So Tzvi Pesach Frank says, and I've heard somebody who says that maybe you're not mekayim pruvu because it's the third party who's doing the ma'isa, not you. He says, no, the doctor's the shliach. So based on that, let's take the next step. The doctor's a shliach. 1 second. If your doctor is a Jew can be a shliach. But if your doctor's a guy, can a guy be a shliach? So according to, if you're going to take the Hartzvi's approach, or Tzvi Pesach Frank, you should be makbid on having a Jewish doctor, right? Because then he can be your shliach. Okay, obviously, where this is possible. The chumras of doing this. But
a Jew who's shomer mitzvot, like who's religious, I mean.
No, any Jew can be a shliach.
Well, all right.
Doesn't have to be shomer mitzvot b'dafka.
He doesn't have to be in mind that he's a shliach.
No, that's a good question.
It's a
good question.
He would have kavanah that he's inseminating.
Well, I mean, by definition, you're saying it's specifically for. Yeah, I mean, he obviously this is his profession. He's not, just here giving someone in the gas station here. Can you. Okay, so let's assume yeah, go ahead.
So if there's no mitzvah, so then you would say there's no reason to...
So this is where it somewhat hinges on it. If there's no mitzvah, the reason why it might not be hotzah zer levatala, lichora, is because it's not levatala, you're doing a mitzvah. But let's say there's no mitzvah now. So is it now, does that make it now hotzah zer levatala?
Is there just an union to bring a Jewish child into the world through your wife?
So that's where we're going to actually move on exactly to today. This whole discussion about pruvu is a very hard discussion to have. Whether yes or no or whatever it may be in this case, there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who aren't able to have children, who weren't able to have children. Even Gdolim, Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish had the Babich Rebbe. I mean, we can go through the generations. There's probably a lot of Gdolim who didn't have children. A lot of it to do with what's that?
The students are their children.
The students are their children. Okay, but that's true. That's true from a rayoni perspective. It doesn't mean, obviously, biologically, and they're not making prove through their students.
No. You said the Chazon Ish did not have children?
Chazon Ish didn't have children, no.
Rabbi Nissim was adopted?
That's his nephew. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Nephew, yeah.
Right.
How... That's A. B, what about all the people? I mean, I have 4 boys. Okay, so technically I'm not Mekayim Pruvu, right? So it's a mitzvah which is not even in your hands, if you think about it. And a lot of people are not Mekayim in. I know plenty of people who have only daughters or only sons. That's not in your control. Maybe nowadays with PGD it is. Okay, we'll get there eventually. But we'll get there eventually because the PGD really is one of those things that really has raised a huge ethical pre-implementation genetic diagnosis. Okay, and we'll get to that in a few weeks. Mitzvah Hashem. Diagnosis, yeah. That means when you're doing IVF, they extract a cell or two after the embryo started splitting, and they extract a cell or two and they test it. They could take the DNA and they test it, and they, based on your embryos, they can see which ones are infected with the disease or not, and therefore only return the ones which are not affected and things like that. But we're going to get to a major ethical. You can also obviously tell what sex the baby is, obviously. So it brings up the issue of sex selection, gender selection, which is a big ethical issue in many clinics around the world. Okay, we're going to get to all these issues, but so basically, you're not really Mekayim, and a lot of people are not Mekayim Pruvu. So is this really such a big deal? So there's Kan Aaron here, and this is one we're going to start off today before we move on to real IVF. There's Kan Aaron, which is the Makar here on top, number 14. He discusses exactly this, and he comes up with a really tremendous chiddush. He writes, "Avalani asaiti if shalomar the guf hamitzvah hu rak leda sabanim velo habia." You can't say that the mitzvah of pruvu, exactly the opposite of the minchas chinuch we discussed last week. You can't say that the mitzvah of pruvu is just having the children, but the ma'aseh is not really the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the children that you actually have in the end. How can the Torah possibly command you a mitzvah that there's no way you have any control over being Mekayim? The mitzvah is after all, if you're going to say that it's the product that is the mitzvah and not the action, not the attempt to have children that's the mitzvah, then you have no control over what you're going to have. You might not have a boy and a girl for who knows how long. You might never have that. Is it his in control? It's not in our control. How can you say that the mitzvah is the product? Ella. The mitzvah proof, he says, a tremendous chiddush. The mitzvah is not the children. The mitzvah is trying to have the children. That means you have marital relations with your wife. That is your hishtadlos. That's it. That is the mitzvah. The exact opposite of the mitzvah. And if you've been zoch to have a boy and a girl, great. Then your mitzvah is over. You don't have to do it. You don't have to try anymore. And let's say you haven't managed to have a boy and a girl yet. Then you have to continue trying. But the mitzvah is not having the children. The mitzvah is trying to have the children.
Where did the boy and girl come in? I don't
because the mitzvah approval, that's the Mishnah, Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, how many children you have to have in order to be Mekayim Pruvu. So replacement level, what's known as replacement level is actually 2.1 because unfortunately, some kids are nifter. So the replacement is 2.1. But the machlokes was what proportion or how many kids you have to have from halachic perspective to Mekayim Pruvu. So basically we follow Beis Hillel, one boy, one girl.
In Shulchan Aruch Paschal as well.
Right, and that's how we're asking, right? One boy, one girl. But that's what he's saying. You don't have no control over this. How does anyone have any control over this? So the only mitzvah that you have Pruvu, tremendous chiddush, you're Mekayim Pruvu, even if you don't have any kids, he says, basically. Because the mitzvah is to try, not to have. Now, it's how that fits into all the sugyas, I'm not going to go there. But what he's trying to say is a tremendous chiddush, and this is very important for our discussion. Whether you Mekayim Pruvu or not, technically, have you been Mekayim the mitzvah? Don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But regardless, according to him, you've still done the mitzvah. Again, have to define what done the mitzvah is. You've done the act of the mitzvah. You've done what you can. That is the most important thing.
Well, this seems to me with Das Yachid, with all due respect to...
And I think it is a Das Yachid, but I'm bringing it up just to highlight this whole discussion around Pruvu. Sometimes it's a technicality. Oh yes, we Mekayim the mitzvah, but what we really want is to have the children. So regardless of whether Mekayim technically Pruvu or not, is what he's saying is that the Ikar mitzvah, you're trying. And that's all you can do. That's all you can do. The Rav Menashe Klein the Mishnah Halachos takes him to task, that's not here. He says this doesn't make any sense. There's no mitzvah, it's clear from the Gemaras. Unless you have the children, you're not making the mitzvah. His point is a valid, and he brings this up in discussion of IUI. His point is a valid point, but he says in conclusion, for sure not. You're not Mekayim proof unless you have the children. Okay. Is there any other mitzvah you can be Mekayim? So the Rishonim bring down, Tosfos brings down, there's another mitzvah called Sheves. Based on the pasuk, Lolo Tovra L'Sheves Yitzar. Okay? That the point of having children is to populate the world, to build the world, to develop the world. So it appears that Tosfos understands that there's a separate mitzvah which is nothing to do with Pruvu, and I think this is what, I don't remember who it was brought this up. There's a separate mitzvah which is not just for you to have Pruvu, but to populate the world. In which case, it doesn't really make a difference. You can be Mekayim that mitzvah, even if it's not technically your children, possibly. Even if you have 2 boys or 5 boys or 10 boys and no girls or vice versa.
By adopting, you could fulfill the mitzvah.
Possibly, yes.
You're adopting and converting because you're bringing...
Okay, so there's a lot to be discussed here, but there's a separate mitzvah. Now, not all poskim, the Aruch HaShulchan has a whole piece on this in Ezra Siman Aleph, whether this is really a separate mitzvah. Where do we find anyone who counts this as a separate mitzvah? He says, L'Sheves Yitzar is just an explanation for the mitzvah approval. It's not a separate mitzvah. But there is an idea here, which is even regardless of the technicalities, whether I have a mitzvah or not, there is an idea that we're supposed to be populating the world and developing the world. So it's possible that even if you're not Mekayim Pruvu, you still could be Mekayim Sheves. And that's sort of part of this whole discussion here. So let's move on to IVF. Okay, all of this was regarding IUI. What about IVF? IVF is very different. What happens in IVF as opposed to IUI, is artificial insemination, where the woman is essentially, nothing's happened to her outside of the sperm being injected. So there's no removal, there's no surgery, there's no removal of any eggs or anything like that. Where does the pregnancy occur? That happens inside, where it would usually occur. It's natural. In that sense, it's natural. IVF is very different. In IVF, the eggs are extracted. There is what's known as retrieval, and then the sperm and the egg have a shidduch in a petri dish somewhere, okay, in a lab, and then everything develops for a few days, and then the best ones are put back in, essentially. And that's where the baby develops. Okay, so that's where IVF is. So that is very different.
They put in more than one?
That depends on the clinic. These are major questions which clinics deal with. Multiple pregnancies, the risk of multiple pregnancies, and things like that.
Because I know that like with IVF, it's always it's more common with twins, even triplets.
Right, and that is because usually most clinics will put back 2, maybe. Most clinics. Do you remember there was an octuplet in California where there was born? I don't remember how many years ago that was.
A year and a half ago we had a quadruplet.
Quadruplet.
I don't know if it was IVF.
Chances are. There's a very good chance.
I was unsure when they did the baby naming. They had 3 girls and 1 boy. I did 3. It was like really funny because I just gotten back from the States and I told the Gabbai, I said, I just got back from the States, I need to say Rika Sagama. And I didn't understand. You didn't call me up for Nolia.
Well, then you understood.
He gave me a hug.
So usually twins are a natural thing, triplets are a natural thing, but obviously as you go up in number, it becomes extremely rare. So yes, the number of twins that are born, for example, nowadays, or triplets or quadruplets, has changed dramatically due to IVF. But most clinics will not put back more than 2, depending on the woman, depending on the age of the woman, depending on the quality of the embryos and things like that. Will not put back too much because multiple pregnancies causes much higher risk.
I would assume they ask the couple if they want that.
I would assume so.
I hope so.
I can't imagine that would not be. I cannot imagine that would not be the case. So back to IVF. So there's a lot of differences between IVF and IUI. How is that going to apply now to halacha? So what we're going to start here is with the Tzitz Eliezer. Tzitz Eliezer number 15. The Tzitz Eliezer has a well-known tshuva. He is a das yachid to a degree, and Tzitz Eliezer comes out very strongly against IVF. So even though he acquiesces to IUI, he comes out very strongly against IVF.
What year was that?
This was written in 1982. 1982 was the year, so we discussed last time, IVF first occurred at the end of the 70s, end of the 70s, and it became officially condoned practice in Israel in 1982. So So it was the head of Shari Tzedek, or one of the heads of Shari Tzedek, that wrote this Shaila to the Tzitz Eliezer, who was the Rav Shari Tzedek at the time.
Who is it? What's
Rav Eliezer Waldenberg. And in this tshuva, he goes through the discussion of whether IVF should be allowed or not. Okay? So building on what we've learned from IUI. How is this different? And should it be permitted? So there's a couple of different pieces here which I've put on the sheet. So the first piece, he says that hafraya malachutit, artificial, what the term for IVF, betof mivchana, in a test tube, it's meshanim b'zeh sidrei bereshis, he writes. Very strong term. This is considered shinui seder bereshis, as opposed to a natural pregnancy that happens inside the womb. This is totally different. Et zera habal mazrim lo el rechem ha'isha l'tochet mavchena. First of all, the husband, semen goes into a test tube or into a petri dish, as the case may be. Umitzad ha'isha ein gam kein hazra'ah. Nothing goes into the woman. El b'imtzayim chirurgim. Everything is done through surgery. Motziim beitzit mi'ashichla u'manichim asal gam kein mivchana, etc., etc., etc. So he basically goes through. You can read this. I'm not going to read the whole thing. 5 lines from the bottom here of this piece, he says, "V'yotzei she'ein kan hazra kedarka lo mitzad ha'ish v'lo mitzad ha'isha." Nothing is natural. Everything is totally artificial. The shnei mizraim al yedei tzad shlishi. That both of them are put together. The shidduch is made by a third party, the doctor in the lab. The shnei mizraim al yedei tzad shlishi mivchana into petri dish. V'gam bitzur hafrayim v'yad yedei harav v'leida sha'yedei ze mekayim mitzvah nisay gam ken shlo kedarko. And insertion back of the embryo is also done shlo kedarko. So therefore he writes, the next piece, he writes, V'lo rak mitzvahs pruvulo mekaymin al yedei kain, elagam mitzvahs halasheves yitzara, which I just mentioned. There's no mitzvah, nothing. What does it have to do with, basically what he's saying is, what does it have to do with the father and the mother? The genetic material might come from the father and the mother, but none of the natural actions that actually cause the pregnancy are happening via the father and the mother. Everything is happening totally artificially. Or as he again put it, Meshanim b'zeh sidrei bereshis. You are changing the way of nature.
If Puravu is populating the world.
Right. So he, again, I'm skipping different pieces here, but what he basically says is this has nothing to do with the father, nothing to do with the mother. It's totally detached from both of them. As opposed to IUI, where the egg is still in the mother, the impregnation happens, fertilization happens in the mother. Right. So there's one piece which is not natural here, which is the father. Okay. Here, everything is totally detached from its makor, and therefore, and he continues to write. Again, this is a long tshuva. He continues to write that, in his opinion, maybe it's not even the mother's child. He wants to say that because
it's the conception is not.
Because the conception is not in the mother.
It's genetically, everything.
Genetically. So we're going to get to 100%. So we're going to get to this discussion. We're going to hold this in our minds for a few weeks. We're going to get to this discussion in a few weeks when we discuss surrogate mothers and egg donors. Okay, what determines?
That's really complicated.
It is very complicated. What determines who's the parent? Is it the genetic material, the DNA, or is it the birthing mother, or is it both? We're going to get to that. So yes, there's a lot of underlying themes that wind themselves through all these different types of treatments, which we're trying to slowly develop, and then we'll get to that a bit later. So the first thing he says is he doesn't think it's pruvutul, he doesn't think it's anything. He says he thinks it's hotzah zeh levatala. Why? Even according to the Marasham, he says this will be hotzah zeh levatala. Why? Why, according to the Marasham, might not have been hotzah zeh levatala? Because it goes straight back into the mother. Nothing's going to the mother, he says. It's going to a petri dish.
Well, eventually will get there.
What will get there? One sperm that went into of all the semen. One.
That's all you need.
So he writes no.
Even natural fertilization, that's all that really happens.
Oh, 1 second. 100%. We'll get to that in a second. So he says he feels it's hotzah zeh levatala because the 99 of the millions of sperm that are there, 1 or 2 are going in to fertilize. One per egg, however many you have. 2 or 3 are put back. Let's say, depending on the clinic, okay, 2 or 3 put back, great. That means 99.99% of what came out is not going back in. Nothing's going back into. So he says he feels it's hotzah zeh levatala. That's what he wrote.
Tomorrow has a case where they're not sure if a person can be molded.
Right, that's Gemara in Yevamos, right. They put something on, right.
So to do something to make him
Yes.
be molded.
So that is the makar that's for testing. That's for testing. So yeah, the Tshuva Moshe, there's a lot of Tshuvas based on that, and how, we'll get to
He
that.
asks,
Yep.
he asks, once you're allowed to be motzi, so why isn't it just not motzi b'yad?
Right.
If they're going to...
We're going to get to that.
But it comes out, in other words, that that's not called levatala because it's l'shem 12.
That's the one the Marasham said, 100%. But the Divrei Malkiel said not like that. All right, and a lot of poskim said not like that.
Yeah, he was the Rav of Shari Tzedek, but today they're one of the forefront of this. Trying to
Okay, we'll get to all of this.
I'm curious to know how and when and what. I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to get to all of that. So sorry. Yeah. So no, it's okay. We can only do so much in 40 minutes. I lost my track of thought again. So yes, he filters the Saz de Levatala because unlike IUI where everything goes back in, here almost nothing goes back in. So that's the second thing he says. And the third thing is really eye-opening. In the second column he writes that what's going to happen if we allow this? What's going to happen if we allow IVF? You just have this column here, Uvifrat, yeah. Uvifrat. The end of this whole new technology is going to lead to the following. Now they're going to start having kids totally outside of the mothers. There have been movies made about this, right? Where they're going to have kids totally, without any connection to the mothers. This is only the first issue, the first step in a very slippery stepping stone. Very slippery slope. And they're going to come to human cloning. Without any, and there's plenty of this going on, discussions. I don't know if you've read the news in the past couple of days. Genetically edited Chinese children just born. You should read the news. Just past couple of days came out. A genetically edited Chinese child. There's two. One was born, I think, and one is in pregnancy right now.
What is that genetically edited?
Meaning they took out the PGD. They took out they fertilized the egg outside of the mother, obviously, IVF, and then they spliced the DNA and they edited the DNA sequences for I have no idea for what. Okay, and they put that back into the mother. This is just in the news the past couple of days. It's been going on. So what the Tzitz Eliezer is saying here is a major ethical question, which is if we allow this, what is going to happen next? And was he wrong? No. He's not wrong.
We haven't reached the point where you can...
We are rapidly going in that direction.
Where a baby can what's the word? An embryo can develop outside of the womb?
No, maybe not that. Maybe not that yet. But the fact that he mentions here possibly having a child without having, even having egg and sperm from a male and a female, that is already under testing.
How would that work? I don't get it.
I'm not exactly sure. You're asking the wrong person.
But the issue...
To the DNA to shoot, yeah.
But the issue about this could lead to other things, that's not answering the question.
So that doesn't deal with IVF in terms of, yes, is this proof or is this sort of but he's saying we should answer it because his final argument, and it's a long argument, we should answer it because of the slippery slope of this begins.
If that were the only reason,
it's not the only reason.
I'm saying if that were, that one, I understand it because...
Okay.
So don't allow the slippery slope, but allow this.
Okay. So this is the issue which Golim have to deal with as opposed to us, which is we have to think ahead what is going to happen as a result of this. And he continues with the next piece which I've underlined. And if you're going to allow all of this, are you going to call these your kids? You did all these things that had no... Let's say you had a kid that was totally not connected to you in any way. It was born in I don't know what. It was born somewhere outside of the womb. Are you going to call that your kid? It's going to ruin humanity. It's going to totally change humanity. And he continues. So this is his ethical taina against it. Okay, and he was strongly against IVF, and he didn't retract it. As far as I know, he didn't retract it. Okay? As opposed to this, we have Rav Nebenzahl. And Rav Nebenzahl and Rav Avadia both wrote very similar things. Rav Nebenzahl has a piece which he wrote in Asya. So Asya is the medical halachic journal. And this is Asya Chalakei, and this was the whole discussion again. This is in the 80s. And he wrote, and the amount of cover he had for Tzitz Eliezer is I couldn't obviously bring the whole piece here. But he writes, even though he very much disagrees, Chas v'shalom, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't want to be, I don't want to be cholik on you, and I'm not saying anything halacha, but these are my tainas. Okay? So he writes, these three pieces here. Number one, Yesh la nistati makom rav lomar, the hotzah zera lahafros beitis eino hotzah zera vatal. So it's to your taina that you're saying that IVF is hotzah zera vatal. I disagree. Ve'ema kamuvan shum dimyon l'dor hamabol l'er l'onan. The hasam kavanas hamaisa lahana below pruvu, v'kan ibcha kavanas l'pruvu below hana. So he says, I don't feel there's any issue of hotzah zera vatal. 2. Next paragraph, Gimel. Gama shekasa the enkan kiyum pruvu v'af lo yachas mitzad she'enu kederech kol haaretz. Tzitz Eliezer's claim that there's no pruvu because it's totally artificial. Every single piece of this is totally artificial. Therefore, it's not considered derech kol haaretz. Therefore, it's not your kid, essentially. La nisaiti yesh lomad shapi have kederech kol haaretz. No, this is kederech kol haaretz. He writes. Define kederech kol haaretz, writes Rabbi Nebenzahl. The ein lanu leilech b'tar chitzonius hadvarim. Let's not look at the outward actions that are involved in this. El b'tar pnimiusam, but follow what's actually going on under the blankets, but behind the scenes. V'zeu derech kol haaretz shtei mafres habeitzis. This is derech kol haaretz that sperm, fertilizes an egg. That's what's going on. That's considered derech kol haaretz. Define derech kol haaretz. You could say, well, you could define derech kol haaretz however you want, but according to Rabbi Nebenzahl, derech kol haaretz is the normal fertilization process is happening. That's derech kol haaretz. I would add to that this was written in the 80s. Nowadays, we mentioned the statistics last week, 4% of all babies in Israel are born through IVF, IUI, etc. So how can you say that's not kederech kol haaretz nowadays? So again, when Tzitz Eliezer is writing this in 1982, when it was just starting, you can see where there is a different take on this, and maybe this is not considered kederech kol haaretz. But nowadays, it's sort of hard to accept such a thing. Finally, to the ethical taina, he writes, Ma shechashash, the fact that the Tzitz Eliezer is choshesh, shiyotzim ba'ayos markim shchakim, the slippery slope. What's going to happen? We're going to have human cloning. We're going to have all these other slippery slopes. Atu kuli alma tzaisi dina? Or you think everyone's going to listen to us anyway? Halo abayos tzatos belav hachi. The problem is going to happen whether we pass in yes or no. Science is going to continue. Medical technology is going to continue. We're not stopping it by saying no. Right. In the meantime, in the meantime, we have to deal with shalom bayis and people not being able to have children. So Rav Nebenzahl writes, no, the ethical slippery slope is not relevant here. And although this is the whole discussion, we have a lot of new technologies, be it internet, be it many other things. And this is what the Gdolim really disagree on very often, is how much do you take into account a slippery slope and how much you deal with the issue at hand now. So Rav Nebenzahl's Taina, and Rav Avadia writes something very similar in the Tshuva and Yabei Omer, is that no, we have to deal with shalom bayis of, unfortunately, many people who are not able to have children properly, easily. So we have to deal with that now. The slippery slope, what's going to happen? They're not going to listen to us anyway. Technology is going to move on. And if we don't allow this now, it's not going to change anything in the future. So we should look at the couples who are not able to have children now and deal with it, deal with the halacha as halacha now, instead of worrying what's going to happen in 50 years. And that is generally the Muslim halacha, not like the Tzitz Eliezer. Here's a das yachid when it comes to IVF. But if you look in Asya, if you look in this